In this video, I'm going to demonstrate the process of using system parameter randomization to actually estimate future returns. Now, this is going to be based upon the article on system trader success using system parameter randomization to estimate future returns. So if you haven't read this article, I'd urge you to go to System Trader Success, locate this article and read it. This video and article go hand in hand, and if you go ahead and read the article first, this video will probably make a lot more sense. So what I'm going to do is take an example system and go through the process as described in this article and demonstrate how to do it using TradeStation's EasyLanguage. So as you see in the article, we have our baseline system. There's the equity curve. And here is the performance report, 39,407.50. Here in TradeStation, I have the chart off to the left with the code for that. And here's the performance report, 39,407.50. So I'm going to go through the steps used in the article. Here is the original code, and we're going to, as we step through it, we're going to modify the code. So let's start right away. The first thing we want to do is remove from the inputs trend filter period, and our BB value. Okay, we remove those from the inputs because what we want to do now is have the software actually generate these values randomly. What we want to have the software do is randomly generate values over a predetermined range, which we're going to define, run the results, or excuse me, perform the back test and save those results off. So we're going to generate random values for trend filter period and BB, which is our big bar volatility filter. And so we want to remove those from the input field and put them into variables. And let's set those to 0 for default. And we can move on to our next step, which is adding our code to actually generate those random numbers. So here's that. You'll notice I put it inside a what's called a once block. So once, begin, end. What this will do is only run this code once during our entire test. At the very start of when this code is executed, this will be generated once, or executed once I should say. And what are we doing here? Here's our BB value. We're going to be generating a random number of 0 through 28, and we're adding 2. And the reason we're doing this is so we get a final value of 2 through 30. The TradeStation function random, and we put a 28 in there, what that will generate is a value between 0 and 28. Well, we don't want 0. If we originally put in 30, because this is what we originally want, right? This is, or I should say, finally what we want. We want a value between 2 and 30. That's what we decided was a reasonable range for our big volatility filter. Well, TradeStation is going to pass back 0 through 30. Well, we don't want 0. 0 isn't useful. Doesn't make any sense for 0 volatility. And we don't want a volatility just 1. We decided we're going to start with 2. So we have to back off, put 0 through 28. That's what TradeStation is going to give us. And if we add 2, then we're going to get our range 2 through 30. So I hope that makes sense. And we're going to do the same thing with our trend filter. We want a value of 100 through 200. So what we want to do, this is our final value. We want 100 through 200. This right here is another variable that I created This is, I'll explain to this in a minute, but we do need to add this to our other variables. Okay, we got our number generator here. Let's move on to the next step, which is adding a new input, and we want to call that run. This is a number, or I should say, this is an input value that we're going to optimize over during the TradeStation optimization process. And that's going to be, if we want to do 5,000 runs, we're going to optimize between 0 and 5,000, and it's going to count, TradeStation will count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to generate the 5,000 different tests. And this is the value, the variable that we're going to hold that in. So we created a new input called run. Let's move on to the next step. Okay, the next step is actually recording our results into a comma delimited file. And that's handled with this code here, which I just pasted in. So what's going on here? If last bar on chart and print once, here's our print once, which we have up here. At the beginning of our run, we're going to generate our random numbers and set this to only print once. So if we're on the last bar on the chart and we haven't printed our results yet, go ahead and do that. We're going to use the file append. It's going to send it to this file, and we have it as a .csv. That's a comma delimited file. And what this will allow us to do is easily import this into Excel. We're going to take our run number, our net profit, and we're going to throw in also here our trend filter period and our BB value. And you can see what this will do is convert that number into a string so it can print it out into a file and then place a comma. It'll print out net profit and then place a comma, trend filter, place a comma, and then finally our BB value. And it's going to append that onto a single row in this file, and then we'll do a new line, and then the next time we come through, it'll continue to file append all of our results for our different runs. So after it does the printing, it's going to set this to false. This is just to help ensure that this will only get executed once per iteration. It's just a little extra test in here I put in here because occasionally the last bar on the chart will execute more than one time on a particular run. So this will simply ensure that that happens. So overall, what's going on? We have when TradeStation first executes, it's going to generate a random number for our volatility filter and a random number for our trend filter. Then it's going to use those values here and here to determine our characteristics for our trading system. It's going to then use those values throughout the entire history of the backtest, and then on the last bar of the chart, it's going to print the results out to this file. Let's compile and see if this works. Alright, we have a clean compile. Let's go to TradeStation and actually use this. Okay, here we are in TradeStation, and we can already see that we have different results. Look at this. Now what happened? Well, when we rebuilt or recompiled our modified code here, that regenerated the backtest, and TradeStation generated two random values for those variables, and we have different results showing up on our performance report and a slightly different equity curve. So the first thing we want to do to run our test now, we've got the code all ready to go. I'm going to go to my hard drive and I go to the root directory. Here are the results right now. Right, this file is generated because we recompiled. Let's delete this file because we want to start out with a fresh file. So if we go to our strategy, format, go to the run, and what we want to do is optimize. We're going to do a run 1 through 1,000 in increments of 1. Okay, get this warning. Yeah, that's fine. So what this is going to do, I'm going to start the optimization, and you want to be sure that you're doing the standard optimization and the exhaustive method. We want it to actually go through in sequence values 1 through 1,000. So we'll do optimize. So we're optimizing over our run input, and what we're telling TradeStation to do is run this back test 1,000 times. And what it's going to do for each of those at the very beginning, generate the random numbers for those two variables, the volatility filter, BB, and the regime lookback period. And it's going to plug those in and perform the back test and then spit out the results to our CVS file, which is just a text file with our values delineated by commas. Simple text file, not a problem. So this is going to take some time to run, and so I'm going to pause the video and come back, and once we have our results, I'll load them into Excel and we'll see what we have. Okay, the run is complete now, and here is the CSV file. I'm going to tack on 1,000 to it. Just this will tell me that this was generated with 1,000 runs. So I'm going to open this up into your spreadsheet program of choice. I'm actually using Apple's Numbers, and I imported it into this table here. And you can see that we have all our values all the way down here, and we can see that actually TradeStation it goes all the way up to 1,000, which we would expect, right? There's all our runs. Why do we have this one? Well, TradeStation automatically is programmed to pick the best, whatever criteria you're using, and so it determined that run 198 was the best one. So we can just delete that last row. So we just have our runs 1 through 1,000. The other thing to note here is we don't have these columns labeled. While it's not necessarily important, just for clarity, I'm going to do that. So this is net profit. Okay, that looks better. Okay, you'll notice, again, I want to point out the look back and BB. We don't really going to do anything with that. I just included this. I thought it would be kind of neat to see those values. So we can just kind of eyeball it and say, yeah, you know what, those values make sense. We can see our look back period is ranging from 100 to 200. We don't see any values going outside that, and likewise our BB value seems to make sense. Other than that, we really don't care about those, so we can kind of ignore those or delete those. I am going to change the name of this table. I'm just going to put this simple mean reversion ES SPP test. So what are we going to do with this? Well, our net profit is what we're interested in. I'm just going to quickly format it. And that's what we recorded. Again, in this case, we're recording net profit, but you can go back to TradeStation and record whatever metric you prefer. Average profit per trade, drawdown, whatever you would like. I'm just using net profit here as an example. So once we have our metric, our 1,000 runs here, and we have our metric, net profit, what I'm going to do is perform some analysis on this. I'm going to create another table here, and what we're going to compute is our median value. Now the median value is going to be for net profit. That's the metric we're looking at. So to compute that, median, and we're going to select column B over here and hit enter. And we have $35,058 for our median value. So what we're doing is we're taking all of our different runs and computing the median value, and we've determined that $35,000 roughly is the median value, which is good. That means this is our estimated future value for the system. It's likely going to return this amount over the same number of trades going into the future. And this looks pretty good considering that we had 1,000 runs and we used the input parameters and generated those values randomly over 1,000 different times, and we've come up with this median value right here. I want to take it a step further. I started another table here, and I'm going to call it pessimistic net profit. And there we go. So pessimistic net profit, what I want to do is move over to compute a mean value first. And a median value and a mean value may confuse some people. The median is actually the very middle. Mean is actually the average. So let's actually compute an average. And we'll go and compute from column B again. And we'll see how close they are. In this case, our mean and median value are very close. But we can do something neat with our standard deviation. I actually had median here. We want to do standard deviations from our mean. Okay, so what are we doing here? Let me show you something here in Google. I found this. Here's a chart in Google, and let's look at this bell curve here. This is going to represent our runs. In other words, most of the runs are going to fall around the median value, which is in the middle, around $35,000. But to the right, we're going to have a few runs that are doing better and a few runs way out here that are doing really good. And likewise, as we move to the left, we have a few runs doing poorer than $35,000 in net profit, and we have some doing even worse, and we have a tiny few doing even worse than that. So this is what's called a normal distribution or bell curve. Now in trading, these don't really exist. It's imperfect. There's something called fat tails. It's not really a normal distribution. But for general purposes, for general computations, this is the theory behind it, and we're just going to accept that our distribution is somewhat similar to this, and it probably is somewhat similar to this. And what we can do then is apply some mathematics. In other words, these standard deviations. So we have our mean value, our average, right here in the middle. That's what the mu represents right here. And then we're going to compute one standard deviation, and that means 68% of our runs should fall within one standard deviation. So let's go compute that. So let's actually add a row here. Let's compute a standard deviation. We're going to use standard dev, and we'll select our net profit column and hit enter. So here's our standard deviation. It's $3,536. So if we want to do a standard deviation on the pessimistic side, what do I mean by that? Well, if we have our mean value here in the middle, that means some runs are doing better. But we don't really care about that. We want to know what's the worst we can do. So we're going to stay on the left-hand side of this chart and compute the value right here. One standard deviation on the pessimistic side, what I call pessimistic, which is on the left-hand side, one standard deviation from our mean value or average value. So what do? We take our mean, subtract our standard deviation. So at one standard deviation away, $31,600. So what this says is, at this line right here, that's $31,000 of net profit. And that means, because it's one standard deviation away, that 68% of our runs will be within this range right here. $3,536, $3,536 negative here, and $3,536 positive here. We're again just focusing on the negative side. So the main point here is, one standard deviation away, we're still very positive. we have $31,610 in net profit as our future projected estimate of this system. Let's go 2 standard deviations away. So we're going to take the quantity, our mean, and subtract the quantity 2 times our standard deviation. So that brings us down to roughly $28,000. $28,000 is down here. So this is saying 95% of our runs are going to fall within 2 standard deviations from our mean. So that's going to encompass a vast bulk of our runs. And what we can see here, even on the most pessimistic side, we're still showing a pretty good net profit. Let's go 3 standard deviations away. We're going to take our mean minus the quantity 3 times the standard deviation. And that's going to bring us to roughly 24,500. So way out here, 24,500 encompasses the vast bulk. 99.7% of the data is going to be contained within 3 standard deviations of the mean. And even on the negative side, we're still showing positive. So what this tells me is, based on these numbers here and this type of estimate and the assumptions that we make in regards to the normal distribution, is that this system is likely going to be robust enough to show a positive return going into the future. Even way out at 3 standard deviations away from our mean net profit, we're still showing profit, a pretty good profit. If you're at 3 standard deviations away and you're starting to approach 0, okay, your system may or may not work. The chances are increasing, right? We never know for sure, but as these approach 0 or go into negative territory, they should put up red flags. And 3 standard deviations away, that's pretty far away. You might want to give a little extra concern. If it's 2 standard deviations away, your concern really escalates, and you may consider maybe it's not clearly a great system. There's really some holes here. There's some questions about it. If you're 1 standard deviation away and it shows near 0 or negative returns, I would be very, very skeptical of the trading model you have before you. This one shows actually very good results. Our estimate of a possible outcome given the same number of trades going into the future. And we can see that we have $35,000 in net profit on this particular trading model as our future estimate of net profit given the same number of trades going into the future. I took it a step further and did a little analysis on standard deviations away from the mean value, and came out with results that look really good for this case. So it's really simple to do. It's a great tool with a little bit of coding and some Excel work. You can add this to your toolkit as another way to test the robustness of your system by estimating what might it do in the future by playing around the parameters, changing the parameter values randomly, testing, in my case, what I consider the sensitivity of the parameters and the overall robustness of the system going into the future. So it's a great tool, not too bad, pretty simple to implement. I hope you found this video and article helpful. Please leave your comments below this video on the article. Comments or questions, and I'll try to get back to them as soon as I can. I really appreciate it. Hope you found this helpful. Again, take care.